let's just start with, I mean, what was picked up by Broadcasting Scotland in a wee interview you did with them, which was picking up comments Mike Russell made about September next year being a potential Indy Ref 2 date. And you'd concluded that by saying time is of the essence. I think it's fair to say, looking through a lot of kind of the comments that are coming in, is that there doesn't seem to be a feeling of urgency within the SNP about any of that. I mean, can we expect September to be an Indy Ref date? And if so, can we expect to see a commitment in the manifesto and expect to see a strategy rolling out?
Yeah, so let me deal with that, and if I may, I'll just make a couple of introductory remarks if I can as well, Lesley, because this has been a long journey for lots of people. My own history in the party and the movement goes back to the late 70s. I joined the SNP in 78. Everything that we went through in 79, and you'll remember the election of Thatcher, a really dismal period. The SNP pretty depressed in the poll, disunity in the party. We went nowhere for a long time, and look at the difference today. Look what we've achieved since. But let's not forget, our parliament only came into being 21 years ago, that sense of self-confidence. And one of the things that I will say today, and I make an absolute commitment to, the movement isn't the SNP. There's a breadth and depth to the movement. The SNP, of course, is a party of government and has a role to play in securing the referendum. But the commitment that I give to all under one banner, and indeed to the movement in a more general sense, is that we all have to work together, and I will remain available to talk with people as necessary and to contribute with them. This is about all of us. This is about all the people of Scotland, and this is about winning a referendum. Lesley, I want that referendum. The SNP wants the referendum. The First Minister certainly does as well. And I can tell you that everything that I'm doing and everything that I've said to my parliamentary group over the course of the last few weeks is, let's concentrate on winning the Scottish election next year, because if we don't do that, then all bets are off. We need to have an SNP majority out of that election. But I and we are planning for a referendum, and I anticipate that referendum will come in 2021. We have got to make this about the sovereignty of the Scottish people, about the right of the people to make that determination that we deserve to have that decision on our own future. And simply, it is not going to be acceptable, whether it's Boris Johnson or anyone else, to be a democracy denier. We will not be having it. But we need to make sure that we unite the movement so that we can succeed on this. I mean, I detect that Westminster is preparing for a referendum, and everything that we see suggests that that is the case. So we need to say to them, look, you cannot stand in the way of democracy. You cannot hold a nation in a union against its will. And we intend to be pretty robust. And what we need to be doing, what the movement needs to be doing, is preparing for that referendum. Let's make sure that we're getting out and we're talking to people. And, you know, when I look at where we are and you look at the 14 polls that we've had over the last few months, I have never been as optimistic as I am today. I firmly believe that this will happen and that we will win it. Not just win it, but win it well, and begin to bring the people of Scotland together as we focus on what we can do in a new independent Scotland.
Okay, when you're saying, I'm not sure if I heard you rightly there, you said you thought Westminster is preparing for a referendum.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. If you look at what Michael Gove is up to, everything which is happening around Westminster, I would suggest to you that everything that was seen with the Internal Market Bill is about the preparation for the kind of campaign that we're going to be fighting against them. And so we need to prepare for that. And
okay, but you know, the thing is that the whole reason this thing has been put together today is because everyone is waiting to be involved in something, but feel pretty shut out actually from what's going on in the SNP, and see no signals, no evidence of kind of strategy or preparation for next year. So can I just ask the obvious one, and I'm seeing it coming in from Stephen, for example. Whoops, that's already jumped down. It's coming in from a couple of people, Dave, for example, saying, why is the SNP leadership stifled debate on Plan B if we're ready, you know, to go next year? Surely we need to get a strategy for how to force a referendum. Or are you saying you're so convinced that the British government, for some reason, is ready to concede it?
Yeah, I don't believe the position that they've got is tenable. And of course, we have to have alternatives. But when you look at the polling, Lesley, when you look at the support that we have now got, and that's really, I will admit, before we started campaigning in a robust sense, and that's what we now need to start to do. This strategy is winning. This strategy is binding.
Sorry, but what strategy?
the strategy of making sure that the people of Scotland have a right to determine their own future by but determining that the Section 30 should be transferred from Westminster to Scotland. And that's what the election campaign that we will be fighting for in 2021 is about the right of Scotland to choose. That remains the gold standard. That was the basis that we fought the referendum of in 2014. And remember in 2007, when we won that election, that was what opened the door, based on the SNP majority government, to Westminster transferring that power to the Scottish Parliament. The exact same thing must happen again. And I'd say to anyone else that's talking about Plan B or any other alternatives just now, we need to pull together. We need to make sure that we can demonstrate that this is the settled will of the people of Scotland. And I'm asking the movement to trust us over the course of the next few months, to give us the support and give us the time to show that we can win and we can deliver on the strategy that we've got. Now, if for whatever reason that we can't do that, then of course we have to pursue alternatives. But why would you
said, Craig, in your first answer, you said that we're prepared to be pretty robust. I mean, just what do you mean? What are you going to do if you don't get the Section 30s transfers? 2007 could well have alerted everybody in British politics to the fact they hadn't got a pushover in Scotland anymore. So, what do you do if they say no?
But the point is, so therefore, the focus of all of this is on what do we do if they say no? And what we should be doing is we should be turning up the heat on Boris Johnson and his government. How dare they deny the right of the people of Scotland to choose their own future? And the questions that we need to... Well, hang on, Lesley, let me just finish this.
What are you going to do, though?
But because what we need to do, what I'm asking the people of Scotland to do, is to support the SNP to get a majority government to give us the mandate to pursue Westminster for the delivery of Section 30. And that remains what we need to be doing in the first instance. Now, if Westminster obfuscates, then of course there are things that we can do. But we do that from a position of strength because the people of Scotland have spoken with that clear voice as to what they expect to happen. But when we're talking about pathways back into Europe, when we're talking about our international relationships, there is no question that doing it this way is by far and away the best route. That's what gets us the buy-in from the international community. It presents the roadmap in terms of getting back into Europe, support that we need from other intergovernmental organisations and so on. I'm not saying it's the only route, but I'm saying it's the best route, and I believe it's the route that we will deliver on, because the question that we will put to the people of Scotland in the election next year, they will support the SNP, and I believe we will win this election.
What question will you put next year?
Well, the manifesto is yet to be written, but that process is underway at the moment. I can tell you that that's happening with colleagues in the Scottish Parliament, and certainly the Westminster Group and the wider party is participating in that process. So that's already started. I've asked all of my MPs to make sure that they're part of that process that's taking place.
Right, but again, can you see what's happening every time? I'm only listening to you, right? And every time you're saying something that's a wee bit interesting, I'm asking you, what do you mean by that? And you're kind of saying, oh, well, I can't really tell you. I mean, that's a lot of trust you're asking for, with a backdrop of what people seem to feel has been so little talk that just mentions independence and a strategy and next year as a date.
Let me just explore that. I mean, lots of people have been at this for a long time, and you can determine where the starting point is. The Scottish Home Rule Association, the formation of the National Party of Scotland in 1928 and so on. Lots of people have wanted to see Scotland become independent. I strongly believe that it is now the settled will of the people of Scotland that they wish our country to be independent. And I strongly believe that if people give us the support for a time-limited period, I'm asking through the election campaign next year to show that we can deliver on this strategy, then that will be the best route of doing this. Now,
isn't it fair for you to tell us what it is you'll have in the manifesto? You've just said it again. There'll be a question. Now I can't get you to tell me, okay, you'll say you've got to draft the blinking thing first. I can see that. But every time one tries to pin, the SNP down to what we would enter next year with, in terms of a strategy, a question, a commitment in your manifesto, anything, we're just not getting anything from you.
Well, I don't think that's entirely fair, because, I mean, you know that parties publish their manifesto in the weeks leading up to the election campaign. Of course, we'll discuss in broad terms the principles that are going to be behind that. But the principle which is going to be the SNP campaign next year will be the right of Scotland to choose its own future, and the right for the people of Scotland to determine when they have a referendum, not Westminster.
Okay, but the other thing one would expect normally is that an SNP conference would begin to be the one that would open up these kind of debates and have a really thoroughgoing discussion about strategy if you were just the year before another indie ref. And yet the conference agenda is pretty blinking bland, and there isn't the kind of vigorous debate that people were hoping for.
I think there is a vigorous debate which is happening up and down the country, and of course the SNP conference is massively important in that regard. But let me say this to you though. I mean, I know some of the chat about the conference agenda, but the SNP, just like this conference today, we're having to do things online. We've got to deal with the practicalities of what can be achieved. There is a debate on independence. There's going to be a long session on that. I suspect that my own speech, the First Minister's speech, and others, Mike Russell, it will focus very firmly on what's in front of us. I recognise that the conference is a time that we really need to kick things off in terms of both that election campaign and a more general making sure that we're building on that already high support for independence. But what I'm saying, and look, there's a breadth and depth to the movement. There are a range of different opinions. Of course there are, and there should be. But I will simply say that this is the time that prize is in front of us, that prize where we all work together collectively, we can deliver on this. And I'm asking people to come with us on a united basis over the course.
Honestly, Ian, this is not collective working. I don't know when you've last, got out to the old Fank with a Crofters local branch, because collective working is not us all waiting for you to tell us when you feel like finally sharing some ideas on us. Oh, wait a minute. On a strategy that we're all putting our blooming lives into with no financial backing, no nothing. And it doesn't ever feel like we're sort of trusted enough within the wider movement to be just part of the planning or the strategy.
Well, I'm extending that hand of friendship to the wider Yes movement under one banner today, that we must work together. I've made that point that this isn't just about the SNP. The SNP is part of it, but the movement has much to commend it in terms of its breadth and depth and the ideas that it will bring forward, its campaigning zeal. And one of the things that I want to see us do is work together. And I did make the point, I think I said it a couple of times, about listening to what people were saying in the organisation. What I will say, which I think is right to say, is I think that opportunity is in front of us. I believe that the strategy that we have of demanding a Section 30 based on electoral success will deliver. And I'm asking people to put their faith in us, to lend us their votes, in order that we can demonstrate that this will deliver what people want.
But for example, the Martin Keating's case that's in the court at the moment has spent a lot of time and money having to combat qualifications and objections put up by the Scottish government, which leaves people to think, why would you not want someone to prove as a point of law that the Scottish Parliament already has the powers to have an official referendum without Section 30 powers?
And it may well be that the Scottish Parliament, the Scottish Government, under certain circumstances, decides to test that in court. But there's an issue in the first instance of demonstrating that the strategy that we've got is the one which is going to deliver for us. And that right, that option to use the legal route has to be there. But it has to be done on the basis, as far as we are concerned today, how we see things, on that process that we are going through.
I've got a couple of things here coming as questions. One was when you and your SNP colleagues walked out of the House and Commons in 2018, it was the most exciting radical thing you've ever done. And the questioner, Roy, is saying, I would encourage you and the SNP leadership to be ready to walk out of Westminster again. Is that something that you're ready to do if a certain barrier is crossed? I mean, we've got the very strong likelihood of a no-deal Brexit being announced next week. What happens?
Well, there are many things, of course, and we've got the internal market bill is something that rightly provokes outrage right throughout the country. But we're dealing with the consequences of COVID, Lesley. And if I look at the situation that we were in 2 years ago, where spontaneously the entire group walked out when I was thrown out, I mean, that was an important moment. I absolutely agree. We can't have any more than 3 SNP MPs in the chamber at any one time at the moment. There's a physical restriction. I mean, frankly, I'd look pretty stupid if I walked out with 2 MPs falling at my back. So we need to look at what we can do in terms of using parliamentary procedure, what we can do in terms of parliamentary process to make sure that we are effective. And I know there are lots of people saying, what is the point of us being down there? Well, one of the things that I hear really week in, week out are people saying they're absolutely outraged as to how SNP MPs are treated in that chamber. The fact that we're told to sit down and shut up. And this isn't about us. This isn't about those in the movement. This is about how this plays out to the wider public. And that disrespect that is shown to us, that disrespect that is shown to our government, is something that those that we need to get to vote for us see in, week out. They see in Prime Minister's Questions that gets a lot of coverage over the news media. So it's important that we continue in dignity to do our job. And of course, where we can use parliamentary procedure, and I have to say with regret, it's not like the situation that it was more than 100 years ago with Parnell, because they've tightened up on the standing orders. But I'm determined that we will be as effective as we need to be. And I'm proud of what the group does and what our staff does. And we need to make sure that we are a thorn in the flesh of the establishment at Westminster, and we spend a considerable amount of time thinking about how we do that.
Okay, but I mean, you know, what it looks like from the outside is, despite the best efforts, you know, we heard George Caravan on earlier talking about just being in Westminster being a hideous place to be and to have to work. It just looks like they're having a laugh. It looks like you're getting caught up in the job that you've been elected to do, in playing, you know, you're having to play by the rules, right? Now, okay, you're not going to make much of a splash, three of you working out, but the point you just made, wait a minute, the point you just made was that people are watching what the kind of direction is, and the direction people might want, especially when we get to a Brexit we did not vote for, is that something different happens to register the fact they have crossed a line.
Yeah, so, I mean, we are not down there to settle down. To use the phrase that was used many decades ago, we're there to settle up. And I look forward to the day, as I believe will come quite soon, where we march out of that place for the last time and we return to Scotland in anticipation of an independent Scottish Parliament. But the fact is, I mean, if we look back over the course of the last couple of years, look at the growing support for the SNP, and more importantly, look at the growing support for independence. We've got a job to do, supporting the government in Edinburgh, being down in Westminster, amplifying the argument. And the fact that I personally have got that opportunity to question the Prime Minister every Wednesday is getting home. It is getting across to people, and it's been part of that narrative that I believe has helped us build support over the course of the last while. Not just me.
Are they? But come up. Let's focus on Brexit, because it's coming at us with an extraordinary urgency, and there's nobody left. If we don't make this an issue, who's going to do it? Labour, the Lib Dems, the media. They're already saying Dominic Cummings has left because he's got Brexit done. They haven't even got an agreement or a deal or no deal. So when it happens, it's a really big deal for Scotland, because we're the only people who have said no to that. What will you do that's different to be heard?
It's a massive deal. Well, in many respects, we've already left. We left at the end of January. We're now in the transition period, and it's a question of the deal that Boris does or doesn't do. But whatever that deal is, it's devastating for Scotland.
I know that. Listen, everyone watching knows that, Ian. We've got 4 minutes left. What are you going to do? On January the 31st, Mike Blackshaw from the Edinburgh Yes Hub and myself organised a demo outside Holyrood, because nobody from the Scottish government, was doing it. So what will the SNP do to demonstrate that the Tories have crossed the line when they announce a no-deal Brexit or whatever, a rubbish Brexit that breaks international law, breaks faith with the Scottish nation? What will you do?
It strengthens our resolve to win the election next year and to deliver the referendum. One of the things that we are doing is building relationships right across the European Union with our friends and neighbours in all the EU states. It's about making sure that we get ourselves into the European Union as an independent country as quickly as possible. That is the only response to the UK taking us out of the European Union against our will. It's about making sure that we have that exit route, that we have the exit strategy, we get to that position of safety. That is the reasonable response to this.
Okay, Roy's got a question. Once we've won the 2021 election with a big majority and asked for a Section 30, how long do we give them to give us a positive answer before we do something more radical?
We need to move quickly, because I accept the point that we're out of Europe at that stage. We have a responsibility to demonstrate that we deliver that referendum in a timely manner, and that referendum must take place in 2021. So any negotiations over Section 30 have got to be executed quickly.
Okay, but I mean, so are you committing in a way to that September? Is that your preferred date, September 2021?
what I want to do is I want to make sure that we have a referendum next year. We'll obviously have to get into negotiations over the timing of that, but I want to make sure that that referendum is held as early as possible. I think September would be a reasonable expectation.
Do you understand that people will have watched you with the best will in the world, Ian, and the SNP leadership saying every year pretty much that it's next year? You know, I've covered every SNP conference, and I can kind of write the thing now without even listening to it.
But what I am saying is that we're now at that crucial point that this is the first time, Lesley, that we've had support consistently for independence above 50%, now in 14 polls. The public support is there. We need to give leadership to those that are expressing that desire, that they want us to complete that journey of our parliament towards independence. We need to make sure that we maximise the support in the election next year. That is the platform for us delivering that referendum in 2021.
Right. Andrew's saying, what is the groundwork that you talked about a minute ago? The groundwork that has to be done?
Well, that has to be multifaceted. Of course, we have to campaign in a different way, but we need to be having conversations with people, township by township, village by village, town by town, city by city, making sure that we're giving people the confidence that they can come with us on that journey. So it's campaigning, but that's going to have to happen increasingly on a virtual basis, online, rather than the way that we would traditionally do things by speaking to people on the doorstep. We can still do that, but it's extremely difficult to do it, of course, while the lockdown measures are in place. So we need to use every avenue that we can to make sure that we're reaching every individual in Scotland over the course of the coming months.
This online event is going to go on to discuss the idea of setting up a Yes movement. Do you approve of that? Do you back that idea?
Well, I think it is the case that we are going to require a Yes movement to be in existence to fight a referendum. And I think the earlier that people begin to think about that and think about how they wish to contribute to it, then absolutely, the sooner the better.
Aye, but just sort of like, obviously the last Yes movement was pretty much run and set up by the SNP. This would be one not run and set up by the SNP. Are you okay with that?
The SNP doesn't own the movement. When the SNP belongs to each and every one of us, we are part of it. The SNP is the government of Scotland, and the SNP will provide the key with the support of the people of Scotland to unlock the door on the referendum. But I'm very happy about an organic expression of support for independence and the movement coming together and providing the infrastructure for that.
Will that be something that the SNP, going back to the very beginning, and that's the final question, you talked about working together and working collectively. If you're happy that an organic Yes movement is being set up, will the Yes movement work? Will the SNP work with it?
Well, I'm here today, and I've expressed, as you mentioned, the John Drummond interview, I'm happy to work with the entire movement. Colleagues are of the same mind as well. Of course, I'm one person, I'm the Westminster leader, but the party is very much committed to working with the movement to make sure that we deliver the result that we all want.